attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay, just let's put it in. And let's do the four immeasurables. Get that off. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen tamche dewatang dewe jutang din pa juchik dungal tang dungal chichutang trawa juchik dungal mepe dewa tampatang minrawa juchik nering chaktang ni tang trawe tang nom chembola ni pa juchik. Okay, everybody. Shamfi, are you having a hard time with your internet? Mine also started tonight a little bit crazy, but
Yeah, I don't
anyway.
know. Lately, in the last few months, it's just been in this area. This particular connection's been very bad. I don't know. It keeps dropping, and I don't know, slowing down. And I've got to do something because it's driving me crazy.
Oh, it's so bad, honestly, when you have all of that, can drive you dilly. Anyway, tonight we're going to do Shambhala Wisdom of the Great Eastern Sun, the practical house for enlightened living. And this is part 4. So it's really, really nice if you go back over a lot of the things that, that we've done in the other 3 parts, because I'm just carrying on tonight, because otherwise keep going back and we seem to never, ever finish in any way. But I was thinking to myself when I was showering tonight, I just thought, what I love about the Shambhala wisdom and teaching, what I really, really love is the fact, the word that he uses, which is called sacred living. I think that we've all absolutely forgotten about sacred living. I think that we're so rushed and so on internet and so on social media and so on news and all the kinds of things. I think we've actually lost that sacred living. And I thought that I would start tonight from Chogyam Trungpa's son. He wrote the epilogue to the Great Eastern Sun. And he said, my father is recognized as a pioneer in the transmission of Buddhism to the West. As such, one of his contributions is the translation and introduction of Buddhism into a context that Westerners can understand. However, if his life is looked at in more detail, it becomes evident that perhaps his greatest gift to the world is his unique contribution of the Shambhala tradition. Shame, she's really having a difficult time. Of the Shambhala tradition of warriorship, that beautiful spiritual warrior, which is so important. He said, growing up with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche as my father, I lived in a Shambhala household. He said, we practiced Buddhism, but the basic environment was Shambhalism, Shambhalian. As is clearly stated in this book, understanding the wisdom of Shambhala is understanding basic human dignity. We've forgotten about human dignity. When you see people, I always hear about people in the corporate world where one person is so nasty to others or full of power. We've just forgotten how to really care for each other. And he said that basic dignity is set in principles and practices in Shambhala, but the root of the teachings is simply how to be a decent human being and how to live in a really harmonious way. He says the wisdom of Shambhala has been gathered for many centuries, and this wisdom shows there is a path, a way to live, and points to how the world works. He said, we do not need to search endlessly or to concoct our own recipes for the meaning of life, Many Shambhala warriors have realized the basic rhythm, the basic energy of their lives. Our duty, our joy, and our fascination with life all come together when we're able to touch that energy. And too few people are able to touch it. He said, understanding that it is the dignity of all humankind. This is not a celestial or otherworldly power. If we lead our lives appreciating both the mundane and the extraordinary qualities, holding them both equally without preference, with a gentle hand and compassionate gaze, we have discovered what being a human being, what being a Shambhala warrior is. And I think that's really what it's all about. And I want to teach you this little story of the hen and her eggs, which is really interesting. And it goes like this. In a book by Godo Nakanishi, there's a story about how a bird hatches its eggs. While the female bird warms the eggs, she periodically gets up, turns them over with her beak, and sits down again. The eggs will not hatch well if she only warms one side and leaves the other side cool. Yet it does not appear that she turns the eggs over because she thinks consciously that it is time to do so. Rather, she seems to do it because as she sits on the eggs, her abdomen gets very warm. And by turning the eggs over, she can cool herself by pressing her abdomen on the other relatively cool side of the eggs. Now, he says our passion for life works in the same way. When your passion embraces the wholeness of life, you naturally look around to see what is cool and what needs to be taken care of. This feeling of passion that arises naturally is the activity or the function of our lives. Now, I find that very, very interesting because it fits beautifully with the Shambhala vision or wisdom. Because in our ignorance, ignoring the truth of who we are and attaching to our temporary identities, we have moved away from the natural order of our existence. Instead, we filled it with so much garbage, social media, technology, good and bad, AI. AI is now the big, the big thing there, constant entertainment to fill any space in our lives, telling untruths, rationalizing, defending our distorted beliefs when anyone gets onto the belief. And this has taken us away from our communion with the earth, with Mother Earth, and with the earth plane, and using pollution. Now, Lama Lena, who's a beautiful Lama who does a lot of teaching, she said that Mother Earth, I think her name is Gaia, correct me if I'm wrong, but she said, is it good? That Gaia is burning. She has a fever, but she says, but she will find a way to throw off her fever and throw off her illness, which for me is so scary because how did we burn her up when she offered us the most exquisite place to live on? And when she said this, I thought to myself, it's so bad that I know so little about the ecology of the planet and how to live in communion. And maybe when we can, all the depressions will go away. Maybe as Chogyam Trungpa keeps talking about the morning depression, about really waking up and feeling the blues, about going to work and feeling low and all of that kind of thing. And maybe if we communed with the earth and communed with the natural order, like the hen turning over her eggs, maybe there would always be a solution that we didn't have to think out, that actually just came to us. But we have to change our whole way of life. Yesterday I was sitting and meditating. I sit on the other side of this room, and suddenly I heard these hardy-dar birds. And I looked up, and there were 3 of them sitting on the roof, okay? And obviously the middle one must have been their baby or their friend or whatever, because the two outer ones were picking all the rubbish out of the other one sitting in the middle, and the other one was just sitting like this. And I thought, how do you know what to pick out? How do you know if there are ticks and all kinds of things, you know? And the middle one just sat so still. I was absolutely in awe, while the others were picking off whatever it was that needed to be cleaned up. And I just thought of a little child in a bath who comes in filthy dirty, and when you wash their hair, they scream and they yell and they don't like what you're doing to them. And here was this little bird just allowing them to pick, pick, pick. And I thought, there is a natural, sacred order, but we've forgotten it. Where was it? Where is it? How do we find it? And I think this is exactly what Chogyam's Shambhala Wisdom is about. He wants to take the ordinary life that we have. And of course, his approach is totally Buddhist, but the Shambhala Wisdom it aligns more with Zen Buddhism than it does even with Tibetan Buddhism. But the thing is that he really wants people to see. So last week, we were talking about the 4 seasons and how the 4 seasons come into your life. And then straight after the session, Kerry, who isn't here unfortunately tonight, sent me, I hope you can get it, Fee, she sent me a placard that she's got outside her office. And she said, I never look at this, but after your lecture last week, she said, I was really, really reading this placard. So let's read what is in the placard outside her office. It says, seasons. You begin to see that there are seasons in your life, the same way there are seasons in nature. There are times to cultivate and create when you nurture your world and give birth to new ideas and ventures. There are times of flourishing and abundance when life feels in full bloom, energizing and expanding. And there are times of fruition when things come to an end. They have reached their climax and must be harvested before they begin to fade. And finally, of course, there are times that are cold and cutting and empty, times when the spring of new beginnings seems like a distant dream. Those rhythms in life are natural events. They weave into one another as day follows night, bringing messages not of hope and fear, but how things are. If you realize that each phase of your life is a natural occurrence, then you need not be swayed and pushed up and down by the changes in circumstances and moods that life brings. You find that you have an opportunity to be fully in the world at all times and to show yourself as a brave and proud individual in any circumstance. Now, isn't it funny that she had this outside, thanks, Fee, Chogyam Trungpa wrote that. Isn't it funny that she had this outside her office? Hello, Marion. And who else did I see? Someone else came in. Pam. It's so nice, Pam. Pleased to see you. And you know what? When you look at the 4 seasons, that's nature's order. And how do you apply the 4 seasons to your life? Because when we're in the winter of our lives, like Tara looks all all wrapped up, and I'm all heated out. When we're in the winter of our lives, that's such an important moment. It's such an important moment when you stay still, because winter means you more stay indoors, you stay in, and you really put up the season things again, okay? You stay indoors. And that's the time to actually look at yourself, discover yourself, prepare yourself for the blossoming. You know, when things come to an end, when people are going to die, and you really look at them, my question to people when they say, why did she have to go? Why did she have to die? And I always ask them, how full was the jug that that particular individual gave you? They say, more than full. Thanks, Fee. More than full. And then I say, but if it was more than full, it's time for you to take the jug and pour it into other cups. So why is it that we can't accept? Why is it that when it comes to the winter of our earth, when things are scarce and when it's cold and when you've got to be inward, that we get so depressed? And a lot of people remain depressed when the spring comes of their lives, when things are blossoming, and often don't even recognize that those things are blossoming and that they're blossoming. They think if their particular way of life is really, really disturbed in any way, there's nothing, no thing. So I just want to read you one more story, and then I want to throw it open for all of you to discuss. It's really important there, Fiona gave it. Just before Tulku Urgyen, who was this wonderful Rinpoche, just before he passed away, I had the great fortune to spend a couple of months at his hermitage, Nagi Gompa. At the same time, work was going on at Nagi Gompa. Statues were being built downstairs in the temple hall. Often I had the task of carrying various messages between Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche and the workmen. One day, the workers were asking me how to go about a particular task. I couldn't settle the matter myself, so I took a note and went upstairs. Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, this beautiful master, lived in a tiny room about 9 by 9 feet, just a tiny little room with one big window. There was a bed on the side with a high railing. He was very old at this time, and enough floor space for maybe 7 or 8 people to squeeze in. At the door was a cloth door hanging, and before going in, I lifted the hanging aside a little and took a peek. Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche was sitting with his prayer beads, gently repeating his mantra, not in a rigid upright posture, just leaning to one side with his legs extended, half reclining with his eyes very juicy and his voice repeating the mantra of Om Mani Padme Hum. I thought I better not go in as I might disturb him. So I waited for 5 or 6 minutes. Then I looked again. He was still like that. Again, I waited. Then 3 or 4 times the sequence happened, and the workmen downstairs were waiting for their job. So I finally thought, well, you got to do what you got to do. So I went in, looked very carefully, then went inside. Whatever state Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche was in, he just turned from within that state and looked, and without losing 1 inch of that state, he started to have a conversation. Hello, how are you? Discussing the task at hand and then making a decision about it and settling it. And then when, as I went outside after this conversation, I looked back and I saw the Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche just reclining right back. He was reclining right back into the posture he was in before and just continuing in the same way with his mantra. That really stuck in my mind. I'd been totally wrong to think that I could ever disturb his meditation. I'd been projecting my own understanding onto Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. Whenever anyone comes into my room when I'm practicing, I get annoyed and all of that. And he never ever got disturbed. Now, why I love that story for this Shambhala wisdom, and then I'm throwing it open and then we'll go on to the next part. Why I love that story for this is because I really feel that our whole lives are a disturbance. That I'm meeting too many people that are depressed, really depressed. I'm meeting too many people that aren't managing their lives. I'm meeting too many people that are down with their lives. Somehow they are not connecting with the natural order of things. They're not connecting with the fact that they are in the right place at the right time. And what they're going through is really, really, really important for their particular development, for their particular involvement in this temporary, transient, impermanent little drama that we're having in this, on this earth plane, where we're burning her up anyway. Think about this. And what does it do? Doesn't it inspire you? It inspires me. Doesn't it inspire you to change the way you do things? That if you're going to learn about Buddhism, whatever that really means, if you're going to learn to be a Buddha would be better, or to be an awakened person, don't we have to fit it with the life that we're going through? And why are so many people depressed? Aren't people depressed because we're out of alignment? I'm throwing that open to you before we go on with anything. Let's hear what you think of all the things I've said tonight.
People, sorry, Mal, a lot
Please.
of us are looking for happiness outside of ourselves.
Okay. But what
And
is that?
well, it means that we haven't sat with ourselves long enough to find happiness. Everything we need is right here. We want life to be happy or convenient or comfortable, or we constantly want something to look forward to. We don't realize that just by accepting and loving ourselves fully, that everything is right there, and it doesn't actually matter what's going on, whether something's happening to us or others or the world, that there is this still a peaceful, lovely space that's always there, no matter what's going on, no matter how we feel, there's always this happiness inside of us.
But you know, let me just ask you something, because it's so interesting, because we're coming into it very soon in his teaching. I like everything you said, except for the word happiness. Because who told us we had to have happiness? You know, sadness is probably the most poignant thing you can experience in your life. Okay, from sadness and from facing difficult things. I mean, but let's not even talk about facing difficult things, because that's scary. But from the word happiness, who told us? Who told us that we had to be happy?
The world, advertising, popular culture, religion, everything. We've been kind of been brainwashed that unless you have this, you're not happy. But it's a lie.
And why do we always have to be happy? Why can't we be thoughtful? Why can't we be sad because of the pain of the world? Why can't we have different feelings in the different seasons, as we've just discussed? Okay, why has it got to be happiness? Because I think happiness is probably the most temporary thing in the world. It's probably more temporary than sadness is. You know, it's really, I mean, how many people do you know that are really happy? I'm not sure that happiness is such a wonderful thing. I think that being able to be with whatever you are feeling is so important, because I think when people go through pain, well, I certainly had the experience of seeing a lot of people that go through pain, and I love them in their pain. I mean, they're so deep, they're so searching, they're so pained that they become aware of everything in the world. When you're happy, you kind of chill, jolling, having fun, knocking people on the shoulders. You know, you don't always see people as they really are. Where did we get that from? Just think about it, because what you've said is 100% right about finding it inside. But trust me, when I find my awakened nature, it's definitely not happy all the time. Sometimes it is, but it's often not. I often have a sense of unease. And then I like to explore the unease. I like to really explore it. Eugene, go for it.
I think Tarlok was first.
Okay, Tarlo, tell me what you want to say.
Thank you, Eugene. I think that one of the things I've been thinking about recently, for those of you that don't know me, I kind of seesaw a lot with my spiritual journey. It's just kind of a historical thing that I do, and it's something that I'm not particularly happy with. And I've been really, this time, as things have been improving recently, been kind of trying to in meditation and through my practice, trying to understand where these cycles begin and end, and how I kind of end up falling off the horse, for lack of another description. And
You and everybody else, okay?
seems to be very drastic when it happens, but anyway, it has brought me a lot of insight, I have to say, and in some ways I'm very grateful for the kaleidoscope of life that I've experienced as a result of all of this. But I'm a psychiatric nurse. That's my profession. And I think that happiness is overrated. I do think that it's drastically misunderstood, and that the rhythm of life and the wisdom that can be brought through periods of winter are very, very important. That's what I've experienced in my own life. However, one of the things that I think about at the moment, as I try to understand what's going on, is consistency. And I see that my inconsistency and my attraction to things that aren't good for me are, and again, this goes back to my belief in attractor fields, which I've spoken about a couple of times here, where, I get involved in things that aren't good for me, and they have a kind of drag, if you like. And before I know where I am, I'm in a place that I don't want to be, like literally, with myself. It's almost like my soul kind of, gravitates towards these negative vibrations. I don't know if it's a great word or not, but that's where I end up. And then slowly but surely I kind of thaw out, and
Get back on track, yeah.
and then I'm kind of slowly getting back on the horse again, and the horse is trotting, and then
But just stop right there, because what you're saying is so relevant. Because you work in psychiatric departments with people that are depressed, with people that are sick, with people that have lost their way in life, okay? And that's obviously why the universe has given you a lot of difficult experiences to go through yourself, so that you can understand other people. And that's what the Shambhala wisdom is about. And the thing that you've got to be careful of is not to attach so seriously to every situation that you go through in life. When I'm going through a dark or difficult situation, I really just non-attached, different to detach, because you can't detach from a dark situation, but you can non-attach. Because if you actually go into the tunnel, I remember Tupten giving such a wonderful analogy. He was walking with Akon Rinpoche. Don't know if any of you remember this story. He was walking with Akon Rinpoche in London, And it was one of the few days of sunshine, okay? And he was talking to his teacher, and it was the most wonderful, wonderful thing. And then, and he thought, the sun is shining and it's so beautiful. And then they had to go into a tunnel. And he tells you the story. They went into a tunnel, and there was urine on the walls, and there was graffiti, and there was terrible things in this dark tunnel. And he looked at Rinpoche, and Rinpoche was as chirpy as can be, as he'd been outside walking in the sunshine. He was as chirpy as that in this tunnel. Now, the point is, how, Tupten asked the question, how does he do it? It's because he's non-attached to the outside, to the circumstances. This is happening and it's going to pass. This is happening and it's going to pass. This is part of my temporary karmic slate in this life, and it's going to pass. But we don't. When we, this is what you're saying, when you fall off the horse, it's like catastrophe is struck, And why wouldn't you fall off a horse and brush yourself down? You don't even have to fall off, and get up and go on and know that it's temporary and transient, because this is called the setting sun mentality, as opposed to the great eastern sun of Shambhala. The setting sun mentality, even when there is joy, turns it into analysis and unhappiness and pain. So these extremes of, now I'm happy and I'm on top of the world, and now I'm depressed and I'm down under and I've fallen off the horse. Why? Why can't we be light and sacred, that whatever's happening in life, it will also pass? And everything that happens to us in our karmic life is our own creation. When you're living with someone who's awful to you, or you're living with depression because of the circumstances of your life, that is exactly what you created, not because the world and the universe is a terrible place, but because that's exactly what you need at that moment in time, exactly what you need in order to come to wholeness and awaken. So it's really important. What you're saying is so important.
I totally agree with you. It's my absolute
So when you're going through a dark tunnel, do it like Rinpoche. So there's graffiti on the walls, there's urine, it's dark, it's awful, I don't feel wonderful, but there's got to be something there, something. And there's that lovely story of the two little boys who were being watched by psychologists behind a one-way mirror. And they put horse manure all over the place, okay? So the first little boy came in and he said, oh, there's nowhere to sit. How can I sit on all this SH? What can I do? This is a terrible, terrible place. How did they put me here? And the second little boy came in and said, oh my goodness, if there's horse HA, there must be a pony somewhere. Isn't it amazing? That's like the sacred outlook, like finding something and using the sadness, taking the sadness.
I've had this experience recently, actually, with I won't tell way too much because it's other people's time to talk, but yeah, from this pretty catastrophic scenario, some really interesting things have been happening.
Beautiful things, and you have got a mission. You've got a mission. You've got to help people who really see the world without being sacred, who see the world not in the Shambhala. Give them the Shambhala vision. It'll be so helpful. Give them the seasons teaching. Give them his morning depression teaching. They're all such perfect teaching. Sorry, Eugene, we finally get to you. Go for it.
No worries. So, but like your statement that you have to be a warrior and then talking about decency and stuff, I honestly think you have to be a warrior to be decent in this world, because you have to face all your own demons, stay in your own tiger, like Akong Rinpoche said, and then still have like deal with all of your insecurities, all of your habits and that kind of stuff, and then still have space for compassion and kindness and putting others first, and like seeing their own habit behavior, because you're dealing with your own shit, but then you see other people not dealing with their shit, and then you have to still like do that. So I think like a Buddhist path is not an easy one, hey? Like it's not for people who want to be on the hedonistic treadmill and just chase the happiness cycle, like you were saying. So it's really, you have to make a conscious decision day in, day out to work on your own stuff, to choose happiness, to choose kindness, to put others first, to see their imperfections and still find space and grace for them. And so it really is a warrior. And I think your question around why are we so alone, or so unhappy or stuff, is I think the whole modern world, if we think about it, previously people are social beings,
They
but
are.
we've been conditioned in modern societies and economies. We each have to have our own bond. Each need to own our own car. We each need to like earn our own salary. There's no more communal living. There's no more familial living with intergenerational people living together, being there for each other, supporting each other. So, and I think that the reality is you face all life's obstacles often on your own, because you have to, because like you're economically, socially, financially set up that way. We can have a nice dinner with our friends and say, oh my God, it's so bad. But at the end of dinner, you're going home and you have to deal with that by yourself. It's not a shared purpose or a shared life.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. And
So we
I'm
should
not
all become hippies again in this, like in the 60s, and live in a communal estate, and
yeah.
like put our bonds together and pay it off in a record time, and like live off the earth, like have no electricity.
But it's so funny you should say that, because we're at that stage where we've got to choose, should we go into a retirement village? So my husband's sitting there and my husband said, no ways are we ever going into a retirement village. I was quite happy to go, but then I went out for dinner, and there were three women from this retirement village, and I was listening to them over dinner, and the one said, oh, on Friday nights we all eat together, and on this day, there's this in the retirement village. And that was where the eyes went closed, because I thought, no, thank you, this communal
But I
living.
think you want to choose your retirement village. So I'm all for buying a piece of land in the Karoo with friends and stuff, and put up tiny homes and
Of your
like
own
build a
space.
commune like that.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, also for your spiritual path, I mean, for me, this is the last part of my life. So I really, really, really take the death and dying teachings very, very seriously. And I want to practice them every single day. So I need a lot of quiet time and quiet space to do that. And, it wouldn't suit me to be, but anyway, it's interesting. Vian, please.
Hello, everybody. Yes, it's a great topic, and just those couple of words you said in the beginning, that sacred living and basic human dignity. I was already like just comparing that basic human dignity to just going out there in the life, like it comes to what Eugene's saying. Everyone's on their own mission, and it's like just makes me feel like the thing is kind of spinning off of the axis because of it's been coming, like over 2,000 years or whatever the case is. But that natural living, what you're talking about, makes me think of, yes, the animals, like you're talking about the Adidas and things, are animals seem to know their place in the and and how the world goes around, the earth goes around, and they don't want to mess with it. But there were human cultures that were like that as well. Some people were like that. They didn't take more than they needed. They moved along. They didn't overgraze. The Indians, or the Native Americans, and even white people at a stage, in Europe before. What my main thing is, it's the religion, is the colonization. That is the mind virus, and from there is the strife. So from you're young, you get born with this thing, like, I have to achieve something to be happy. So you see it, it's like ingrained, it becomes almost like in people's cells. And then there's can't get satisfied in that framework ever. So I pity people, because I see that as well, what you're saying. I'm getting a little bit to where, in the 40s, you start to see people. I'm like, this guy doesn't have the tools. So you just see people that they're drowning out there, and I'm like, and then I come with then I'm like, people feel like I'm condescending maybe, or like, you're like, or it's not landing even at all. Even if I try to distill it to it, then I'm like, there's actually nothing I can do. It's like, because
Yeah.
it's taken me so long to grasp the little bit that I've got that gives me some tools. So just to over a meal with someone, give them something, it's not going to change their life. So it's a bit of a bleak thing in some
Yeah,
ways.
but it's so amazing, because when people start becoming aware, and you just drop you just drop a little drop of something into their plate, at that time. And I've always told you this story. It's one of my favorite stories, very quick, that I was at a wedding once, and all these magnificent desserts rocked up. And so I was really fascinated with this woman that was next to me, because she was filling her plate. She said, "Oh, this is delicious." I was watching her, just fascinated that, I was thinking, shame, Mart, I know you have to go. I was thinking to myself, oh, I won't eat that. It's too fattening and I won't eat. But she was putting it all on her plate. Anyway, she turned around with her full bowl of cream puddings, and she turned around, and I'm watching her, but I'm not watching her in disgust. I'm watching her in delight, because I thought, how amazing that she can just put everything onto her plate. And then she goes, "Oh, well, you only live once." And all I said was, standing there in front of the dish, I said, "Oh, do you?" And she said, "What? What did you say?" I said, "Do you only live once? Maybe you do, but I don't." And then you just saw her face, just one little drop like that, which probably set her thinking for a number of, for a long time. So I think you can, and I think you can do it at people's level. I can see that a lot of people can't. I can see sometimes what they've done in their lives, but I can see that they're just not ready. They're not ready to actually accept or understand it. Then you have to give baby purity foods in a little teaspoon, a little at a time, and maybe it can't relieve them. But to come back to Chogyam's next point was sacredness, the natural law and order, and he calls it joining heaven and earth. Now, this is such an important idea, joining heaven and earth. He said, when you experience that there's such a thing as basic goodness, and that things are in a natural order, you begin to realize that there's no natural evil. Now, isn't that a fascinating idea? There's no natural evil. Now, you would argue with me. You'd say, of course, terrorists have got natural evil. I mean, people who walk around doing terrible things, raping and everything, have got natural evil. But actually, in both Shambhala and in Buddhism, there's no fundamental evil trying to destroy the world, okay? And he says, and I'll talk about it in a moment, he says, when you understand this, then you can feel protected and nourished by the norms of natural order. You can respond to situations quite naturally with natural goodness that does
What's the
exist.
matter, Mom? Where's Mommy?
Sorry. Oh, somebody has got their thing on. Okay. So unconditional goodness is fundamental. There's nothing really to reject, but we perceive there's a lot to reject. And unconditionally good is not opposed to bad. It works. It is natural. Now let's just look at this before we go on, because he says the setting sun mentality world tries to manipulate basic goodness into basic badness by saying everything in the world is evil. Now, if you look at that, it's so interesting, because what does ignorance mean? Ignorance means ignoring the truth. Now, when you look at the story again of the Garden of Eden, and when people ask, oh, did they eat an apple they weren't supposed to eat? Did the snake, tempt Eve, and then Eve tempted Adam? Rubbish. Those are all just symbolic stories. What happened was that at the moment that we separated ourselves from our true nature, at that very moment, okay, we suddenly were cast out of the Garden of Eden. Now, what is this Garden of Eden? This Garden of Eden is a pure land. Now, what is a pure land? Is a pure land a place where beautiful trees and fruit and everything exists? No. A pure land, a Buddha field, a pure land is when you have a mind consciousness that can see things in a completely different way. Now, when you have no awareness, because there are two paths. One's an awakened path, a path of liberation, and one's a path of delusion. Now, when man in the Garden of Eden, if you want to call him man, took a step back and separated himself from his basic goodness, from his true nature, he was banished. He no longer could see all these beautiful things that we talk about in a Buddha, in the Garden of Eden. Now, when we go back to being who we are, we suddenly are in a Buddha field. Everything is pure. What we see as evil is actually pure, but we can't do it because we don't have the perception. So when man goes and does terrible things like wars and killing and raping and evil words and everything, he actually does it because he ignores the truth of his basic goodness. Now, you can debate this with me, but I'm just saying that in Buddhism, you never get this. When you go to church, when you even go to synagogue sometimes, but really in churches, you get a lot of this. And you actually say, I remember the first time I learned Mother Mary's rosary, okay? You had to say, Hail Mother Mary, we are basic sinners. Is that right, Iga? Hail Mother Mary, please help us, we are sinners. Okay, where did this come from? What does it mean? I mean, basically, what did we do with sinning? We did it out of ignorance, and then we classified it as bad. But what Chogyam Trungpa is trying to say is that you can feel protected and nourished by the norms of the natural order when you know that the majority of you is basic goodness. It's a pure state, not even affected when you kill someone. Whatever you do, it never gets tainted. So surely We've got to unite with that in order to really get a sacredness and a pureness and see it in a pure way. It's hectic, I know. But the thing is, he says we have to trust basic goodness and develop patience. Because the first time, I'm coming to you, the first time you actually taste a little bit of that light within your own being, even when you're in a bad time, you don't trust it. The next time, like as Tauluk was saying earlier, you fall off the horse. You don't trust that the goodness and the basic primordial consciousness knows what to do. Like I say to my husband, when are we going to find a house? And he goes, you're impatient. But really inside me, I actually am totally at peace and confident that there is a place where we need to live. And that is coming from a different space to the human being that wants all their possessions and everything. And when you look at it in this way, you suddenly do realize that there isn't actually natural evil in the world. It's people's defenses. It's people's inability to see the truth. It's very interesting. Tauluk, please.
I'm struggling with something, if I'm honest.
Go on, go on.
So
You
it's
must.
kind of to do with people, and to do with this idea that people aren't good for you and why they're not good for you. And so I've recently come out of a relationship with somebody who I would really identify now as being very unhealthy for me to be with. And I've spent a lot of time as a psychiatric nurse, I think, kind of propping up and helping and supporting and trying to see the good in and doing all of that kind of thing. And there's something about what you're saying where I feel entangled. I can't see the wood for the trees really with what you're saying a bit. I get it to some extent. I certainly see that when people go traveling together, for example, I can go to India and I don't see a dirty, horrible rubbish bin. I see it at times, but I see a culturally diverse place that's just full of potential for me to roll up my sleeves and get involved and learn loads. So I can see that people have different perspectives on different situations, and that one man's beer is another man's cup of tea, or whatever you want to say, you know. So I get all of that, but then when it comes to, and as a psychiatric nurse, I've worked in prisons as well, and you know, you look at certain individuals and you just think, shit, I don't want that one. Don't want that one loose ever. You know, that one really is a scary so and so, you know.
I know what you're saying exactly, but the thing is, we're going beyond this as a human. You're going beyond this when you find that cosmic consciousness, that primordial consciousness.
Is that naive? That's the struggle that I'm having with my experience.
No, no, because you know what? My favorite story always, and I tell it often because it's stuck in my head so much, was I was once counseling a girl many years ago, and it stuck in my head. And she was in her bed, she was a young woman, and this guy climbed through the window of her house. She heard a crash, came into her house, took her and raped her. Okay. And for years, her whole life was based on this whole rape and how she was intruded upon and how terrible she felt. And I said to her, did you see this person as evil? So she said, of course. And then she said, But you know what, Melanie? She said, what I found unbelievable about this whole rape was that at the end of the rape, the guy took the blankets, covered her, believe it or not, and then said, and close the window so no one can get in. I mean, and so what I did with that, I mean, what I actually used that, and I said to her, you know, this is your saving grace. Because if you look at that person who raped you and then covered you with a blanket and told you to close the window so you wouldn't be harmed, you can actually see the basic goodness. And in that moment, you could feel absolute compassion for this terrible intrusion that happened in your life. Now, that's also what I'm talking about. That sometimes, or what Chogyam Trungpa is talking about, sometimes you look at a person and they've really done terrible things. They've cheated people, they've done all kinds of things. They might have really harmed a lot of people. But suddenly you can detect that basic goodness. And I'm sure it happens with psychiatric patients as well. That basic goodness is there. And that's when you know there's no natural evil in the world. This is actually quite a frightened person who's done things, you know, maybe there is such anger in that person. Maybe there's anger towards his mother. Maybe there's all sorts of things that caused whatever happened. But you actually see that even though this being is operating like that, there is a basic, beautiful part of that person and never gets tainted. Sorry, Eugene, you wanted to say something. Go for it.
But I think this teaching is important because I think a lot of our upbringing, we work in very absolutes. A good person, a bad person, a kind person, a mean person, a friendly, a rude person, right? So, and I think a lot of that also places a lot of pressure on us to always be nice, to always be perfect, to always be kind, to always, and like I think the hard thing is like sometimes that is a trap in itself in your spiritual practice as well, because if you can't forgive yourself and work on improving day by day and have compassion and kindness for yourself, and also understand that it's all part of the same energy. It's you don't have to make it like take on this whole identity and all that kind of stuff. It really helps your spiritual practice, but I think this absolute black and white thinking is harmful both to us as individuals and having empathy for ourselves, and also in actually being kind and having empathy in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what Chogyam Trungpa here says, he says, we have to trust basic goodness and develop patience. Trust the natural sense of predictability. We have no predictability about what's going to happen just now and tomorrow, but there's a natural sense of predictability, and be willing. That doesn't mean everything's going to turn out okay, but be willing to just be there with what you have because it's just right. He said, nature begins to speak to you, and we free ourselves from the mentality of praise and blame, which is really important. And he says, how do you cultivate the great Eastern sun? He says, when we've developed some of these qualities, the fruition is connected with know-how. Know-how. So we don't know. We saying, what should I do about this? How should I do this? What should I do about that? But the know-how part of us knows how to do it. So we know how to go about practicing a lot of these lofty principles like trust, which leads to patience, which leads to no more laziness, which leads to faith, which leads to renunciation. And he says, working with yourself involves a journey. As part of this, every one of us has to go through our own garbage. And he says, some is real garbage to be discarded, and some is organic garbage which can be recycled. Now, I love that. There's garbage which you have to just go beyond, and there's organic garbage which can be recycled. He says, you can't philosophize or rationalize. You have to look at it straight. What is this neurosis? What is this neurosis? Exactly, no mud, no lotus, that I have. We're always afraid. I'm always looking to be recognized. I'm always blaming. I'm always scared about what somebody's saying to me. I'm always, cheating myself. I've got my little philosophies, because I say to my domestic worker, if you hear me talking and there's no one in the room, don't worry. So she said, that's fine. Who are you talking to? I said, myself. Okay. And I like talking to myself because I understand myself and I can answer myself. And I often go, this is not on, Melanie. I tell myself, this is not on, and I allow it. I allow myself to explore some of the things that I might have done wrong or some of the things that I might have done right. I explore it aloud with myself, talking to myself. It's so important. What is garbage and what is organic garbage? What shouldn't you throw away? I mean, in Buddhism, when you see anger, you shouldn't throw it away. I was counseling someone a few weeks ago who had a lot of anger, and he said, I've come to you for anger management. And I said, why would you come to me for anger management? If you want anger management, it means you think your anger is real, tangible, and you think it's you. I said, let's rather go deeply into the anger. Let's find out what your anger is doing. And he was quite a macho guy. And so his anger was giving him a macho status in the world. Whereas to actually find the very sad part about him, or the very forlorn, or the very afraid of being rejected part, of which the anger was on top. So that anger was recyclable. We could take the anger and we could reduce it into a sadness and into a lot of other things. We could reduce it right in and look at it very deeply. So let's do a little meditation and look at what is recyclable. What is it with all these emotions that I have? What are they really? Can I recycle them? Can I come to terms with them? Can I stop blaming myself? One of the worst things that Chogyam Trungpa talks about is when you hate yourself and you hate who you are and you hate how you look and you hate everything you do and you don't think you do a good job. And if you do a good job, you're really scared that everybody should see and know you do a good job. Where did we get this? How did we go away from the natural order of things? Let's do some meditation and exploring. What can be renewed? As you breathe in, I want you to breathe in the fresh, open, blue Blue is the color of Dharmata, the fresh, open, blue, completely whole, universal sky. It's there. Outside, there's a beautiful practice in Buddhism called the three skies. And you take the outer sky and the inner sky, the inner emptiness, absolute spaciousness to fit everything in. You breathe it in through your nostrils, fill your whole body, permeate it with this blue nature, open, pure, spacious, and breathe out the garbage, because you want to see what is recyclable and what is really just dissolving. So if we look at all our angers and we view them, our angers are mirror-like wisdom. They're there to show us something. And if we take the Jerusalem sand bottle with all its layers, different layers of sand, and if we permeate that anger, as we go deeper and deeper and deeper into the sand, we find hurt. We find not liking ourselves. We find being afraid of rejection. We find childhood memories in which we really did not feel appreciated. We find a whole lot of things. And if we are able to reach out to those things, to allow them, to give them space, all the hurts, all the pains, all the uncertainties, all the unpredictability, all the pains, all the sadnesses. We see, once we see them, we actually embrace them. And as we embrace them, there's no tangibility. They just melt into our hands, into our hearts, into the blue, blue sky. Let them be, let them dissolve, and see that it's all been recycled, the garbage, the stories we tell ourselves every day. We tell ourselves these stories about what we want, about what we have to attain, about how we need to be respected by people. We tell ourselves these stories over and over and over again, and they become neuroses, and they repeat, and they repeat, and they repeat. Open them up. Let them dissolve. See them for what they really are. They were protection for us. And now that we know we have a whole awakened Buddha nature to protect us, we don't need to protect a self that never really existed. We can just be who we are in our basic goodness, the cosmic dot, the primordial purity out of which we are all made in a beautiful way. You can't philosophize. You can't rationalize. You can't keep saying the stories over and over, giving you reasons, blaming yourself, hating yourself. wanting to be like somebody else, putting these high standards, feeling humiliated if anybody says anything to you. We have to recycle that, looking deeply at the people who might have first passed this on to us. The mommy who never knew her mommy very well, who never knew how to be unconditional. The father who was pushed or poverty-stricken or whatever, who had all his ideas to keep him safe and you safe. And maybe that's why he was who he was to you. And maybe you were in the right position at the right time to learn, to recycle, to see that this particular being that you are, that you think you are, with all its stories, with all its neuroses, with a name, with an identity, that all of that is just garbage. It's what we've learned. And now you want to go into identitylessness, which means full of possibility, full of everything that you need, changing every day, looking at the people that have hurt you and seeing their hurt, touching everything in your lives and realizing you're in the right place at the right time. And that's how you can really recycle your garbage and come to a point where you actually wake up in the morning and see the beautiful sky outside and inside. And you appreciate it. And it's sacred. And you feel whole again, beautiful, ready to just go out and touch the lives of all those who are in pain. Just touch them with a little drop from your heart. Don't really know how I got here tonight, but here I am. Okay. I'm talking about, I had a completely different thing prepared for you of what happened tonight, but maybe that's what you need. And you must ask me. I want you all to know that I am here, that some of you are so devoted and so amazing, always coming and always trying and always practicing and always everything. And I want you all to know that I am here for you. So all you have to do is text me or ask me, and we can work through these things. These are the temporary, transient things. We don't want to be defeated by the setting sun world. Chogyam Trungpa says that the great Eastern Sun people never say good night. They only say good morning, even at night. Okay, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm sure if you say to your partner, good morning, when you're going to sleep, he'd probably look at you, but maybe it's a great thing. If you live in a Shambhala household, maybe that's a great thing, because maybe you have to be uplifted by the great Eastern sun. Maybe. But really, I think that all of these we can really, really, really do. In Buddhism and Shambhala, you're not condemned as a sinner. You're not ever fundamentally condemned. You're always a beautiful being with a beautiful nature who might be going through difficult times and have responded in a bit of a lousy way. But that's okay. You can change that tomorrow morning. So let's dedicate for all. I'll answer any questions after this, but let's to everyone, I'm taking that one forward. Fantastic. I'm so pleased. That's the Shambhala approach. So let's dedicate tonight to all the people. I mean, I saw that one hostage who was absolutely emaciated, and then they still had to tell him that his wife and children had all been killed. And I thought, how can you do that? How can you try and live after that? But you know, we're never given more than we can handle. And sometimes there is a beautiful part of us that can handle a lot of these terrible things that happen to us, and somehow come through them with a beautiful, maybe basic goodness, and with a beautiful understanding of the suffering of human beings. So tonight, if there's any merit from this talk, may all the beings who are suffering, all the beings in wars, all the beings who are really going through trying times and who are really having difficult times, all the beings who've lost their homes to fires and everything, may they all benefit from this teaching. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience. May all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonamdiye tamche zipane topne nepe dranam tamshene jegana jipana dropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Let me stop the